They were monks. They were warriors. They were legends. Clad in white robes, marked with the crimson cross of martyrdom, they carved their place into history through fire and steel. Their name? The Knights Templar. But behind the myth lies something more dangerous, a forgotten truth that stretches from ancient Jerusalem to modern America. Who were they, really? What secrets did they guard? And could it be possible that the treasure they left behind is buried not in Europe, but beneath American soil? To uncover the truth, we must travel back to the 12th century, back to the bloody dawn of the Crusades. It was 1096. The Pope had declared war on the infidel, calling Christian knights to retake the Holy Land from Muslim rule. Tens of thousands answered. And after 3 years of horror and hardship, they did the unthinkable. They captured Jerusalem. But peace never lasted long in the East. Pilgrims flocked to the sacred city, but the roads were filled with danger, bandits, raiders, murderers. And so, in 1119, a small band of 9 knights took a sacred oath. They would not just pray for pilgrims. They would fight for them. Led by Hugues de Payens, this brotherhood took residence in Jerusalem. The king of Jerusalem granted them quarters on the Temple Mount, where once stood the Temple of Solomon. From this sacred location, they drew their name, the poor fellow soldiers of Christ and of the Temple of Solomon. It was humble, even ironic, for they would soon become anything but poor. At first, they were just knights, but as the decades passed, their power grew with stunning speed. Nobles across Europe donated land, money, and men. The church granted them privileges no other order had ever known. They answered to no king, no bishop, only the Pope himself. The Knights Templar became a force unlike any other in medieval Europe. They built castles, commanderies, farms, even vineyards. At their peak, they owned more than 9,000 properties from England to the Middle East. But perhaps their most revolutionary role was in finance. The Templars invented early banking, a system where a pilgrim could deposit money in Paris and withdraw it in Jerusalem, safe from robbery. They transported gold, guarded treasures, and stored secrets. But something shifted after their first few years in Jerusalem. Historical records suggest the knights spent an unusual amount of time tunneling beneath the Temple Mount. They weren't escorting pilgrims, they were digging. For what? No one knows. Rumors began to spread of ancient scrolls recovered, of relics from the Second Temple, of powerful knowledge that predated Christianity. Some believe they found the Ark of the Covenant. Others whisper of the Holy Grail. Whatever it was, it changed them. The once humble protectors became shadowy elites. Their wealth grew exponentially. Their influence expanded. And with it, suspicion. The Templars kept their rituals secret. Initiates swore absolute loyalty. Outsiders whispered that they worshipped strange idols, that they bowed to a bearded head carved in stone, that they spat on the cross in secret rites. Were these lies spread by jealous rivals, or hints of a deeper truth? One thing is certain, their power made them dangerous, especially to kings who owed them money. And one king in particular, Philip IV of France, owed them more than most. Philip was ambitious, broke, and terrified of losing control. So he did what desperate rulers do best. He betrayed his allies. On Friday the 13th, October 1307, the king launched a coordinated attack. Templar properties across France were raided at dawn. Knights were arrested, tortured, and forced to confess to heresy. Thus began the end of the Templar order, at least in the public eye. But here's the mystery. The treasure was gone. Philip's men found vaults emptied, ledgers missing. Ships vanished from port days before the arrests. Some say the Templars knew what was coming and escaped. Others believe the order had already splintered into secret branches, some of which may have crossed the ocean. And this is where the American connection begins. Templar symbols appear in strange places, in colonial architecture, on early American gravestones, even woven into Freemason lore. Could some of the knights have fled to the New World, centuries before Columbus? Could the legendary treasure of the Templars lie buried in the mountains of Arizona or beneath the forests of New England? October 13th, 1307, a day that would echo through history. Across France, as the sun had yet to rise, armed men stormed monasteries and fortresses. Their targets, the most feared and revered knights in Christendom, the Templars. But this wasn't war. It was betrayal. By the end of the day, hundreds of knights were in chains, accused of heresy, idolatry, devil worship. The once sacred order was now condemned. And the greatest mystery? The treasure vaults were empty. King Philip IV of France had moved swiftly, with brutal efficiency. He owed the Templars massive debts. With the support of his puppet pope, Clement V, he had the entire order declared heretical, based on confessions extracted through torture. But his true prize, the Templar wealth, slipped through his fingers. Where had it gone? We know this much. Days before the arrest, several Templar ships vanished from the port of La Rochelle. Crews gone, cargo undocumented, orders undisclosed. They disappeared into the Atlantic and were never seen again. Some believe this fleet carried gold, relics, and secret documents. Others claim it carried something even more dangerous: knowledge, maps, codes, artifacts tied to the earliest roots of Christianity, or older still. But as the order fell across Europe, not all Templars were captured. In Spain, Portugal, and Scotland, local kings defied the papal order. Templars were quietly absorbed into other organizations. In Portugal, they were renamed the Order of Christ and retained their lands and ships. Under their banner, Prince Henry the Navigator would later launch the Age of Exploration. But what were they really exploring? In Scotland, outlawed knights found refuge in lands held by the Sinclair family, a powerful noble house with rumored Templar connections. Their estate, Rosslyn Chapel, would become a magnet for conspiracy theories, Masonic lore, and whispered secrets about the Grail. Centuries later, when early explorers crossed the Atlantic, some carried not just maps and muskets, but symbols that eerily matched those of the old Templar order. What if the Templars didn't just vanish? What if they went underground, literally and metaphorically, passing secrets from brother to brother, protected by code, ritual, and blood oath? And what if those secrets included something more than treasure? Templar ships were among the fastest and most advanced of their time. Some historians believe they could have reached the Americas long before Columbus. Legends among certain Native American tribes tell of pale men in red cloaks who came from the east, bearing strange tools and sacred stones. Of course, historians dismiss this as myth, but there's something they can't ignore: the trail of symbols. In Nova Scotia, carved into stone near Oak Island, are symbols nearly identical to medieval Templar codes. A stone cross on the island aligns with the stars on a specific Templar feast day. And deep beneath the surface, excavators found wooden platforms and tunnels built with European techniques, centuries before official colonization. Coincidence? Or confirmation? And then there's the connection to Freemasonry. In the 18th century, Freemasons rose to prominence in Europe and the American colonies. Many of their rituals, symbols, and titles mirror those of the old Templars. Some lodges even claim direct descent from the order. Was this a coincidence? Or a planned transformation? And why did so many founding fathers, George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, Paul Revere, belong to a society whose inner sanctum resembled that of the medieval knights? Perhaps because the ideals of liberty, secrecy, and sacred knowledge were never lost, only reborn. So what does this all mean? A betrayed order, a vanished fleet, re-emergence under new names in new lands. A trail of symbols stretching across centuries, from Jerusalem to Scotland, from Portugal to Nova Scotia, and perhaps into the very heart of the United States. What if the Templar treasure wasn't just gold? What if the real treasure was knowledge? And what if that knowledge still exists, buried not beneath stone, but behind locked doors, guarded by descendants who swore never to let it fall into the wrong hands? The Knights Templar officially ceased to exist in 1312. Their Grand Master was burned at the stake, their assets seized, their name erased from the Church's favor. But symbols don't die so easily. Across the American Northeast, in the oldest towns and coldest woods, traces remain. Strange symbols carved in stone, crosses that match no Christian denomination, architectural structures that seem misplaced, hidden in plain sight. Could these be the quiet echoes of a vanished brotherhood? Or did the Templars leave more than legend behind? Did they leave a legacy? Let's begin in Rhode Island. In the city of Newport stands a round stone tower, often dismissed as a colonial windmill. But its style is Romanesque, not English. Its arches follow Norse proportions, and most strangely, it aligns with the winter solstice sun, much like ancient European ritual structures. Some scholars say it's simply a quirk of early settlers, but others point to a different origin, that this tower predates colonization and may have been built by men carrying the secrets of a forbidden order, men who fled Europe and found sanctuary in the wilds of a new continent. This isn't the only clue. In the forests of Maine, hunters have stumbled across stones engraved with the Templar cross petit, a distinct design with flared arms, different from traditional Christian crosses. Local legends speak of a white-robed brotherhood that lived among the pines for a time, trading peacefully with the natives, then vanishing just as silently. And in Narragansett Bay, fishermen have reported submerged stone blocks in unnatural alignment, a kind of breakwater or foundation. Who built it? No one knows. But perhaps the most direct trail leads not through stone, but through brotherhood. The Freemasons have long claimed spiritual descent from the Knights Templar. Some dismiss it as romantic myth, but early American Freemasonry was anything but playful. It was secretive, symbolic, structured. Many of its founders, including George Washington, took part in ceremonies that mirrored those of medieval knighthood. And here's where it gets stranger. In a Massachusetts lodge from the 1700s, a mural was discovered beneath a layer of paint. It depicted two knights on a single horse, the original seal of the Knights Templar. Why would American Freemasons honor a defunct Catholic order outlawed centuries before? Unless they weren't honoring history. They were preserving it. This symbol, in hoc signo vinces, in this sign, you will conquer, appears again and again on gravestones from the colonial period. It's often accompanied by a cross petit or a pair of crossed swords. The recurrence is too consistent to be random. But perhaps the most puzzling case lies not in the forests of the Northeast, but in the unexpected heart of the American continent, in Oklahoma. In the early 1900s, in the Wichitas of Oklahoma, a farmer uncovered a stone slab with Latin inscriptions and geometric symbols. One of the most striking was a cross, identical to that worn by Templars. The slab was dated, not by science, but by language, to sometime between the 1300s and 1500s. And while some archaeologists call it a hoax, the tool markings, weathering, and context remain hotly debated. Nearby, a second stone was found. This one bore a ciphered code, one that, when deciphered, spelled out a Latin phrase. We came in faith. We guard until the time is right. Who is we, and what are they guarding? Could this be the echo of the fleeing Templar fleet? A remnant of exiled knights who found sanctuary not in Scotland, but in a vast, unknown land? It seems unlikely. And yet, Templar crosses appear in places they shouldn't. Maps dated to the 1500s show rivers deep into the American interior, rivers that European explorers hadn't yet reached. And at least two explorers, Frenchmen Jacques Marquette and Louis Joliet, documented native tribes describing white brothers from the east who came before the Spanish. It's circumstantial, but patterns are emerging. A cross in Maine, a tower in Rhode Island, a cipher stone in Oklahoma. Were these isolated incidents? Or pieces of a forgotten route, one stretching from the Atlantic coast to the frontier? A hidden network? A sacred mission? If so, where was it leading? They say history is written by the victors, but sometimes it's hidden by the survivors. In the humid swamps of southern Louisiana, deep within old French settlements, stories began to surface in the 19th century. Stories of a strange manuscript, brittle with age, sealed in wax, written in Latin. Not a biblical scroll, but something older, stranger, and possibly forbidden. The scroll was rumored to contain a confession, a lineage, and a map. It would become known as the Louisiana Scroll, a document that may connect the Templars to early America in a way few dared imagine. To understand how such a scroll could end up in Louisiana, we have to go back, not to the Crusades, but to the 1700s, when France still held vast territories in the New World. The region now known as Louisiana was once a strategic frontier, a place of trade, exile, and silence. Among the thousands who came were aristocrats, soldiers, merchants, and a curious group of devout men who referred to themselves simply as Les Frères Silencieux, the Silent Brothers. They lived on the outskirts of society, traded in Latin, and spoke little. Locals described them as well-educated, reclusive, and unfailingly disciplined. and most of them bore rings marked with a single symbol, the Templar cross. Were they simply Freemasons in disguise? Or something older? In 1892, a plantation owner named Etienne Lafont reportedly uncovered a sealed clay urn beneath a collapsed well on his family's estate near Baton Rouge. Inside, a rolled parchment, bound in silk and sealed in wax. The writing was Latin, elegant and disciplined. The wax seal? A cross petit, stamped with the letters T, C, M, Templum Christi Militum. Lafont's family, devout Catholics, sent the scroll to a local Jesuit seminary for translation. That's when things got strange. Within days, the scroll was removed from public view. The seminary refused to discuss it. A few years later, a fire mysteriously consumed part of the archive where the scroll had reportedly been kept. But not all was lost. Before the fire, one Jesuit scholar, Father Dominique Corot, had made handwritten copies of the scroll's contents in his personal notebook, which survived in his family until the 1940s. His great-nephew, a historian in New Orleans, eventually released fragments of the text. What did it say? "We who escaped the burning cross have found refuge in the wild lands. The lion sleeps, but will awaken. Beneath the sign of the morning star, we prepare the path for the ark." The scroll refers to a journey taken across the Great Sea and to a Council of Nine who re-established the order in exile, not in Portugal, not in Scotland, but in the wilderness beyond the setting sun. Is it possible a remnant of the Knights Templar reached the Americas independently and re-established their mission here? Skeptics claim the document was a hoax, but linguists have confirmed that the Latin was consistent with the 14th century, not the 18th. The phrasing, the script, even the references to astronomical alignments align with medieval Templar writings preserved in Vatican archives. And it's not the only clue. Among French Creole families in southern Louisiana, certain surnames, D'Artois, Leclerc, Beaumont, trace back not to the known passenger manifests from France, but to obscure regions of Languedoc and Poitou, regions heavily associated with early Templar commanderies. One particular document, unearthed in 1986 by researcher Marion D. Broussard, listed the inventory of a river trading outpost near modern-day Lafayette. Among its cargo, 6 casks marked with red cruciform seal, books in bound calfskin, not French, ritual stone of black origin, inscribed with code. The inventory disappeared shortly after its discovery. Who were these people? Were they descendants of Templars who escaped Europe's flames? Were they Masons carrying forward the flame of hidden knowledge? Or were they something older, bound to a mission begun centuries earlier under the Temple Mount? Whatever the truth, the pattern is clear. Signs, documents, and whispers point to a quiet but deliberate transfer of sacred material, not into vaults, but into the wilderness. And the scroll, if authentic, is perhaps the most powerful clue yet. It ends with one final line, scrawled beneath the wax seal. Ca invenit, hunc custodiet. Non est aurum. Est ignis. Let he who finds it guard it well. It is not gold. It is fire. Not gold. Not silver. But fire. Knowledge, perhaps, so powerful it must be hidden or destroyed. We've followed stone crosses and ancient scrolls. But history doesn't move by symbols alone. It moves through people, through families, through blood. If the Templars really did escape, if a remnant of the order survived in secret, their legacy wouldn't just be carved in stone or hidden in swamps. It would live on through generations, tied to land, to property, to names. And some of those names echo through the very founding of America. Let's begin with the Freemasons. The connections between Freemasonry and the Knights Templar have long been debated, dismissed by some as romantic myth, embraced by others as coded truth. But their symbols overlap. Their rituals echo one another. And, most notably, their structure is nearly identical. Both orders had secret initiation rites. Both divided members into ranks. Both swore oaths under penalty of death. And both claimed to guard hidden knowledge. So it's no coincidence that many of America's founding fathers were Freemasons, and that their lodges bore markings strikingly similar to those found on Templar churches in Europe. George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, Paul Revere, John Hancock, all Masons. But more interesting is who wasn't so well known. Families in Virginia and the Carolinas who maintained private libraries, spoke Latin at home, and kept peculiar heirlooms. Swords, rings, parchments, always locked away. Take the Randolphs of Williamsburg, for example, a prominent colonial family whose ancestral crest included a Red Cross patee, despite having no ties to the Crusades. Or the LeClairs of North Carolina, who reportedly passed down a stone medallion, engraved with both a lamb and a Templar cross, for 9 generations. In many of these lineages, sons were inducted into local Masonic lodges before the age of 20, not just as members, but as ritual masters, fast-tracked through degrees. They weren't joining. They were continuing. Continuing what? Some believe these families were entrusted with fragments of the Templar mission, knowledge, documents, even artifacts smuggled out of Europe centuries earlier. There's one particularly strange case. In 1839, a French-American schoolmaster named Gideon Marquette wrote a private letter to a colleague in Montreal. The letter, written in both French and Latin, spoke of a red line of inheritance and of a relic still buried where the old brothers left it, not to be found by shovel, but by oath. The letter described a sequence of symbols to be traced across the East Coast, from coastal Maine to Maryland to the Blue Ridge Mountains. What was this line? A trail? A code? Some modern researchers believe Marquette was describing a ritual path known only to certain families, tied to astronomical events and sacred geometry. And when that path is mapped, something incredible appears. The points form the rough shape of a Templar cross, aligned, not randomly, but with equinoxes and solstices, with the rising of Venus, with Sirius, the morning star referenced in the Louisiana scroll. Coincidence or design? And then there's the silence. In interviews with descendants of these old families, historians often encounter the same thing: courtesy followed by retreat, a polite refusal to discuss old stories, and sudden changes of subject. It's not just secrecy, it's protection. We're not just talking about symbols on stone or lost ships from France. We're talking about a network, perhaps not formal, but remembered. A memory passed through generations, not in history books, but in ritual, in names, in firelight. And if that's true, if the order didn't vanish, but mutated, then the treasure may never have been lost. It was simply guarded. In 1928, a schoolteacher named Eleanor Brigham inherited an old farmhouse in Vermont. Among the clutter in the attic, she found something curious: a sealed wooden box. Inside, a folded parchment, brittle and stained with time. It showed the east coast of North America, but not as she had ever seen it. There were no names, no borders, just rivers, hills, symbols, and a path drawn in faded red ink that started near the Atlantic and disappeared deep into the interior. She showed it to local historians. Most dismissed it as a child's fantasy, but one Latin scholar noticed something strange. Scribbled in the bottom right corner: Iter Sanctum, Sigillum Custodum, the Holy Journey, the seal of the guardians. Some believe this map is a hoax. Others think it's something far more dangerous, a genuine Templar artifact that shouldn't exist. The path begins near Cape Cod, curves through Newport, Rhode Island, crosses the Hudson River, and runs southwest toward Appalachia, with cryptic symbols marking key points: a starburst, a cross patee, and finally, a chalice. Modern researchers have dubbed this line the Red Path. And when overlaid onto real geography, something remarkable happens. Every point aligns with known sites of Masonic or early colonial mystery. The Newport Tower, possibly of Templar origin. An old churchyard in Pennsylvania, where gravestones show pre-revolutionary Templar symbols. A sealed cave system in Virginia's Blue Ridge, rumored to hold European relics. And a plateau in Tennessee, where local tribes once spoke of sky messengers who taught them to guard the fire. Coincidence? Or carefully chosen stops, stations of a sacred route meant to hide, transfer, or protect something? A modern-day researcher, Daniel Archer, spent 2 decades following the Red Path. He matched points on the map with real coordinates, interviewed families living along the line, and discovered something unsettling. Each site has its own local legend. Stories of hidden rooms, buried books, watchers in cloaks. Every story, different, but strangely connected by theme. And then, Archer disappeared. In 2004, he went off-grid during a solo trip near the final point on the map. His last journal entry read, "The stone is real. I saw it. They still guard it." Was Archer silenced? Or did he simply find what he was looking for and decide it was better left hidden? In the wake of his disappearance, others have tried to reconstruct the Red Path. Some claim it forms a sacred geometry, a Templar cross overlaid on American soil. Others see it as a trail of exile, a route walked by fleeing knights, preserving their legacy one hidden stop at a time. And what of the final symbol? A chalice. Was it meant to be literal, the Holy Grail? Or symbolic, a vessel for wisdom? Whatever its meaning, the map should not exist. Not in this hemisphere. Not in a Vermont attic. Not with Latin script tied to a European order dissolved over 700 years ago. Unless it was real. Unless the Templars did come here. Not as conquerors. Not as explorers. But as exiles, hiding something that had to survive the fall of Europe. And if that's true, then the Red Path is more than a line on a page. It's a warning. It's a riddle. It's a thread stretching from the old world to the new, carrying the last spark of something sacred. In the next chapter, we descend below the surface, into caves, vaults, and tombs. What lies buried along this trail? And has anyone already dug too deep? Above ground, we find symbols, but below, we find silence. Across the American East and Midwest, small teams of independent researchers have uncovered something startling. Beneath hills and fields, behind collapsed entrances and sealed tunnels, lie structures that don't match native tradition or colonial design. Some are chambers, others are corridors. Some seem natural, until you see the perfect angles, the stone carvings, the Latin inscriptions. It's as if someone built a hidden world beneath our feet and never wanted it found. Let's start in West Virginia. In 1983, spelunkers exploring an unmapped cave near Seneca Rocks discovered a narrow shaft that led to a chamber shaped like a cross. On its walls, faint but distinct carvings. A chalice, a sunburst, and the words, Non temibo, custodium. I will not fear, I guard. Local authorities dismissed the find as colonial graffiti, but no records exist of settlers ever building stone structures there. And Latin? Rare even in churches at the time, let alone wilderness caves. Moving west to Arkansas, in the Ozark Mountains, a hiker uncovered a collapsed entryway near a limestone cliff. Clearing debris revealed a hidden stairway spiraling downward. At the bottom, a dry, vaulted room with triangular pillars and what looked like a baptismal font, except it was engraved with a Templar cross and surrounded by unknown symbols. Geologists confirmed the chamber was man-made. Archaeologists declined to comment. Then the site was quietly purchased by a private foundation and sealed. What are they protecting? Some say these chambers are part of a forgotten colonial sect. Others believe they're Templar hideouts, way stations along the Red Path. But then came the cipher. In 2009, a metal detectorist in eastern Kentucky unearthed a small copper plate covered in etched symbols. At first glance, meaningless scratches. But when cleaned and analyzed, they revealed a grid of Templar-style cipher, similar to ones used in 12th century Europe. When decoded, the message read, To guard is to wait. To wait is to serve. No treasure, no map, just a philosophy, one passed in silence. Independent researchers have found patterns in these messages, echoes of a code passed down not just through time, but geography. Certain symbols reappear across different states. The flaming chalice, the eye in the cross, the seven-pointed star, each one found in caves, tunnels, or beneath old estates. And yet, no institution investigates them. No university catalogs them. Why? Perhaps the answer lies in silence. Multiple researchers report being warned to stop. Emails vanish. Websites go offline. Excavation permits are denied without explanation. One team, operating under anonymity in southern Missouri, claims they located a sealed chamber with iron reinforcements, possibly 14th century. Days later, their access road was bulldozed. Their drone footage? Deleted. The land was bought by an unknown LLC. The project shut down. All this raises the question, if there's nothing there, why are so many trying to keep it hidden? Could it be that the Templars did leave something behind? Not gold, but knowledge? Not just a path, but a vault? And that someone still guards it? Ancient scrolls, Vatican records, Freemasonic archives. Some say they prove the Templars survived. Others say they're forgeries. But one archive, kept hidden for over 200 years, may hold the key to the greatest mystery of all. What were the Templars really protecting? We followed the red path. We descended into caves, uncovered symbols, decrypted messages, and heard the voices of those who claimed to carry a legacy in silence. But the deeper we searched, the more one question returned, again and again. What were the Knights Templar really protecting? Gold? Relics? Secret knowledge? Or was it something more powerful and far more dangerous? Not gold, not silver, but fire. Every clue we followed, from the Louisiana scroll to the map found in Vermont, from the ciphered stone to the sealed vaults, pointed not to a pile of treasure, but to a pattern, a mission. The Templars were warriors, yes. Bankers, yes. But above all, they were guardians. Custodians of something too important to trust to kings, popes, or even time. A truth that had to survive the fall of empires. We searched for vaults and tombs, but maybe we were looking in the wrong place. Maybe the treasure wasn't meant to be found. Maybe it was meant to shape. Look around. The Templar cross appears in the architecture of Washington, D.C. Their rituals echo in the foundations of Freemasonry, a society that helped birth a new nation. Their belief in discipline, secrecy, and spiritual service resonates in the very institutions that defined the early United States. And those who carried their knowledge? They didn't hoard it. They planted it. What if the real American treasure is not buried in a cave, but embedded in the ideals that shaped a nation? Liberty, initiation, a sacred brotherhood beyond blood or crown. We may never find the fabled vault. We may never confirm the journey of the lost fleet, or what truly lies at the end of the red path. But one truth becomes clearer with every symbol we uncover. The Knights Templar never truly vanished. They changed names. They changed robes. But their mission continued. And perhaps that's the final revelation. The greatest treasure the Templars left behind is not hidden in vaults, but in the minds of those they trusted. Ideas, symbols, oaths, passed from generation to generation, sometimes in secret, sometimes in plain sight. And perhaps, just perhaps, they're still watching. So when you see the cross carved into stone, when you walk beneath arches built in perfect silence, when a symbol stirs something ancient in your memory, ask yourself, is it history or is it legacy?